I think that, again, here's going to be the difficulty. Even with what Erin just said, there are going to be people who advocate for gentle parenting who are going to push back and say, no, there's times to identify something is wrong. And again, drilling down deeper, especially, and you've got kind of two audiences here. You have just those who are, secular individuals who advocate for gentle parenting. Then you have Christians who are trying to adopt the aspects of gentle parenting and fit it into kind of their Christian faith. And what you're going to see is that there's going to be some really deep rooted contradictory concepts. And so one of the things in secular gentle parenting you have is this idea that you don't have human beings who are born with a human nature that is fallen and sinful, right? You have people who are born good. In fact, Dr. Becky, one of the big, gentle parenting advocates, has a book entitled Good Inside. And the idea is that you have these children who are morally good inside. They're not fallen creatures. And so so oftentimes what happens is the language of right and wrong gets replaced with the language of unmet needs. So it's not sinful behavior. This behavior now is, and this is where the understanding part comes in of those 4 words, right? So you want to understand what's going on with the child because you want to try to get to the root cause, which is a great idea. But the root cause is not, hey, they're sinful. They have a rebellious heart. No, it's that there's some unmet need, and you as the parent are probably responsible for that unmet need. And so you've got to be the one to figure out what is that unmet need. And this is why you have to be empathetic. And this is why you're respectful and you're looking to, create understanding. Which again, you see the appeal here. It sounds good, and yet then when you kind of switch out, when you get down to the details, hey, sinfulness for unmet needs, and now we're not going to correct behavior like what you saw in the park. You don't identify that as sinful. You don't think in terms of consequences and punishment, right? These are passé.
Yeah, actually, a lot of gentle parenters will just say flat out, punishments do not work. Consequences do not work. And you'll hear this even in Christian gentle parenting circles too, which to me just seems so obviously unbiblical. I mean, if you just look at how God relates to his people in the Old Testament, God seems to think that punishment and consequences work well.
Yeah.
As the father of Israel, he allows natural consequences to come sometimes and gets out of the way of those. And then sometimes he uses punishment to teach. And so from a Christian perspective, you hear this stuff and I just think, oh, they don't realize they've adopted a secular worldview and rejected the way that God has instructed us how to teach our children, but also how God has modeled that for us too.
Yeah, and you don't even need a Bible really to know that consequences and punishments do in fact work. I mean, not 100% of the time, but if you make something illegal, yes, there are going to be people that still do it, but it's going to deter a lot of people because they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to get pulled over by the cop. There's going to be a deterrent if there is a consequence that actually is followed through on and enacted. And it's so interesting.
Alisa,
yeah.
I think you just said something that's so important, I think, to pause. You said it doesn't work 100% of the time. I think that's one thing that a lot of gentle parenting capitalizes on is that there are, they can point to plenty of examples when punishment or a consequence did not work. And then therefore that view then is deficient. Having consequences doesn't work all the time. And so there's this idea, and again, I think it's tied in with if you have a view that children are not inherently sinful, but that they are essentially good inside, well, then if you create the right environment, if you meet all of those needs, what's going to happen is this kid's going to blossom and they
Right.
are going to turn into this little individual that you will relate perfectly with, and it will be happily ever after. And that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what with a lot of influencers, that's just what you hear, even though they're not going to say that, you
Yeah.
hear that, like, here's the scenario, do this, and then it will all be good. But
Yeah.
we know, and there's lots of examples out there as well, gentle parenting techniques do not work all the time
I was just going to
either.
say that. I'm like, yeah, okay. So if this doesn't work some of the time, and I feel like I'm sticking my hand into a hornet's nest by saying this, but gentle parenting, like no consequence, no punishment will not work 100% of the time, right?